Thank you for joining us. I'm Gord Long with the Financial Repression Authority. Today I have the privilege of introducing Kristin Tate to our Financial Repression Authority viewers. Kristin is a political columnist and author of the book Government Gone Wild, which we're going to talk about here this morning. Welcome, Kristin.
Thank you so much for having me on, Gordon.
I've been looking forward to it because I found your book quite interesting, and we've been doing a lot of work with trying to understand the millennial generation, and you seem to have your hands right on it, not only of generation, but just a real sense for it. Kristin, could you give us, our viewers, a bit of background, things you've been involved with up to in writing the book?
Sure. Well, I actually started out as a reporter. Right after college, I moved to Houston, Texas as a staff reporter and editor for Breitbart.com. So I was right down there on the border during the border surge of 2014, when all of those immigrants were coming across the border and just completely overwhelming our system. I got a firsthand look at that and did a lot of just, straight reporting. And after I spent some time doing that, I thought, well, the election's coming up. I would love to get involved with more opinion. So I started writing columns for the National Review and the Washington Times. And then I wrote this book, which is Government Gone Wild. And this is really an effort to reach out to millennials and younger baby boomers ahead of the election and grab their attention, open their eyes to some critical issues, and get them engaged in politics in a way that is conducive to progress in the right direction.
Was there something that specifically triggered your interest in writing the book, an event or a situation?
Yeah, I went to college in Boston, which is where I know you live now. I went to Emerson College. While I was there, I was really struck by the apathy among my peers when it comes to politics and economics. A lot of young people seem to be very passionate about social issues like gay marriage and abortion, but they had no clue what was going on with the economy. They didn't know anything about the debt. They didn't know anything about taxes, and they didn't really seem to care, to be honest. So noticing this apathy really made me want to reach out to my generation. It was something that I kind of put on hold while I went to Texas and did reporting, but I've always wanted to write a book that would reach out to my generation in a way that would resonate with them, and this election seemed like the perfect opportunity to do that.
Kristin, I came from another generation, and I was a generation of the Vietnam War. I was living in Canada, and I was going to college, and I had 2/3 of my political science class were draft avoiders from the United States, fleeing, giving up their future because they felt so passionate about it. And the youth in that day, it wasn't just the war. It was a lot of different subjects. They were demonstrating, they were passionate. The last thing in the world I would have ever accused an American youth of being was apathetic. So what you just described and what I've seen is a dramatic shift. And one of the things we're going to talk about is why that would have occurred or what's driving it. So can you take us through your book and the key messages in the book and how it was structured? Or how you tried to deliver the message that you had?
Well, I purposely wrote the book in a really light, colloquial way. So you can really open my book on any random page and start reading and not be confused. And I did that on purpose. I don't want to overwhelm young people with too many heavy facts. I don't want them to be depressed. I really wanted to provide a light, enjoyable, and fun read that will open young people's eyes to some critical issues and get them interested. If you want millennials to not be apathetic, you have to get their attention in a way that will let you keep their attention. So millennials, because we grew up with technology, tend to have shorter attention spans. I mean, I say that I have a short attention span too. I mean, we all do. So it's unrealistic to expect a young person who's not already politically involved to pick up some long, boring book by, Ted Cruz or something. They're not going to do that. So if you want to get them interested, you really need to give them something fun to engage with. So my book is it takes people, the readers, through various topics, everything from social issues to taxes to foreign affairs. And the main message throughout this book is that whenever too much government gets involved, usually our freedoms are eroded. And I'm trying to show young people this in a way that they'll be able to understand and, again, connect with. And I use a lot of pop culture. I try to utilize humor, again, to make it a fun page turner. And I think once you get young people interested, once you get the conversation going, it's usually easier to keep their attention. The battle is just getting their attention initially. So that's how I structured my book. Again, really light read. It's also filled with a lot of shocking facts that I think a lot of people don't know about our government. A lot of research went into the book, but it's presented in a very fun way, this information.
What kinds of facts would be shocking to the millennial generation, or would resonate the most with them, that would be something about the government they didn't know?
One thing I really try to show millennials is how we really need to start demanding accountability from our politicians. Our politicians are just so sanctimonious, and I walk the readers through a lot of different examples of this. You know, they love telling us that we don't pay our fair share. Meanwhile, they turn around and live like kings and queens on our dime. I mean, we paid, for example, we paid $500,000 for just a few conferences that the DOJ held for their employees, and we paid $12 per muffin for these employees to enjoy at their conferences, and $8 per cup of coffee for the same people to enjoy. I mean, there's no accountability. They're spending money. Milton Friedman said, you spend other people's money much easier than you spend your own, and it's totally true. So I'm trying to show millennials, look, our money, our hard-earned money, I mean, we're scraping to get by, and all this money we're paying in taxes is going towards these sanctimonious politicians to live like kings and queens. But I also provide a lot of solutions in the book, so it's not just a total downer. There are a lot of things we can do to turn the country around, but you've got to show young people why they should care and why we should demand accountability from our politicians.
Precisely. Earlier, when you were talking, you know, what I'm hearing with this particular generation is, having grown up in sound bites, attention span is paramount. It has to be very simple and net. And second, it's got to be entertaining and fun. Those are the words I'm also hearing. Maybe it has to do with attention span or the amount of education, or not education, entertainment that we've had and experienced right from youth. But those are easy things to say, but tough to translate politics in that way, because politics becomes a little bit heavier discussions. Okay, so that's a challenge. But where would you stand in the social spectrum? Would you say you're very conservative? Are you further on the left? Where in the spectrum, between a Bernie Sanders and a Donald Trump, where would you put yourself without if you can?
Well, I think I'm actually a pretty accurate representation of what the millennial generation tends to feel about politics. So poll after poll shows that millennials tend to be more socially accepting of diverse lifestyles, so maybe more socially to the left. You know, we want the government to stay the heck out of our personal lives. We want to live the way we want to live, but also fiscally conservative. We don't want the government taking our hard-earned money and spending it on things no responsible family would ever spend on. So I would say that I tend to be a representation of that, socially more liberal and fiscally conservative. It's kind of libertarian, and poll after poll shows that that's really where young people are at, even if they don't know what the word libertarian means. When you ask them about the issues, many young people want the government to stay the heck out of our personal lives and out of our wallets as well.
Every generation feels that way. That's nothing unique. But the older you get, the more you feel more strongly about that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, though, that a lot of the older, more establishment Republicans tend to harp on social issues a lot, like, you know, abortion and gay marriage, because, you know, a few decades ago, something like gay marriage was very controversial. But my generation has grown up with all of us have gay friends. We all know people who are gay. And, most of us, I think there's some statistic, I don't know the exact figure off the top of my head, but it's like 3 in 4 women either have had or have a friend who's had an abortion before. So these issues are a little bit more close to home for my generation than they were for the previous generations, which is why I always tell Republicans, I see the future of the Republican Party as being a little bit more libertarian. And if these older Republicans don't start understanding that, you're going to keep seeing younger millennials flock to the Democrats because they really see these social conservative issues as deal breakers a lot of the time.
I'm hearing you say, and I think I saw it in your writings, that you're really a libertarian yourself personally.
Yes, I would say I'm definitely more of a libertarian. And I think, again, that my generation tends to think that way as well.
Without maybe them knowing that's what they're articulating.
Right.
What issues in this current election is resonating with them, in your opinion, your observations? What is bothering them the most at this point in time?
I would say income inequality in the job market. You have a record number of millennials living with their parents still. Even though more of us are getting college degrees, we can't find good jobs. The job market's awful. You have a lot of young people who do have college degrees who are working at low skilled, low wage jobs, like doing things like bartending or serving tables. And, we're depressed. We're depressed with the current situation. And that's why you're seeing Bernie Sanders do so well, because he is sending a message that sounds positive to young people about the future. Even though, obviously, you and I both know, Gordon, that socialism would destroy my generation, a lot of young people don't realize that. And when they hear Bernie Sanders talk about income inequality, when they hear him talk about things like wealth distribution to a millennial who's sitting in their parents' basement without being able to get a job, that sounds pretty good. So I think that's why we're seeing Bernie Sanders do so well. And if the Republicans or if Hillary Clinton wants to grab some of this millennial vote, they need to start showing young people how their policies will lead to jobs, good jobs, not just jobs, but good jobs, and how their policies can bring the prosperity to all Americans. That's what young people care about.
Yeah, not to pick on Bernie, but his message is very positive. It would be uplifting to the youth of saying this would be better. There'd be better equality, they would sense, or they'd be better off. But I don't hear any solutions of how you get from that utopian idea to the realities of actually implementing it. I don't see that. And having grown up in a socialist environment, that's the first thing I always look for. It says, great, tell me how you're going to do it. Exactly. Why is it that they're not listening to that, trying to understand that mechanics of how that would happen? Is it a lack of education of just how our economic system works?
I think that's part of it. Again, a lot of millennials don't understand how our economic system works, and they're desperate. They just hear these sound bites of positivity from Bernie, and it's better than anything else they're hearing. So, I mean, that's why they're so excited about Bernie. I think the GOP in particular has failed miserably when it comes to reaching out to young people. And whether you like it or not, it's depressing, but young people, it's all about bumper sticker politics. If you want to get the attention of young people, you have got to spread your message in catchy, easy to understand ways. Bernie Sanders has been the master at that. And in my opinion, again, the GOP and Hillary Clinton have failed terribly at that. So it's not necessarily about, Bernie Sanders doesn't really need to show young people how he's going to make these things a reality, because right now he's the only one giving them any hope at all. So, I think it's up to Trump, if he's the nominee, and or Hillary Clinton to show young people why socialism is not the answer and will not bring about prosperity. But unless they do that, young people will still keep feeling the burn. I mean, young people are really passionate about Bernie Sanders because he's giving them hope.
Is it an anti-capitalist sentiment that we're hearing here? That their perceptions of what capitalism is, and it's not working, and therefore it's not the right approach to running an economy?
Well, Gordon, there is an interesting poll that came out from Harvard a couple weeks ago that showed when asked about capitalism, 3 in 4 millennials had a negative view of capitalism, but almost an equal number of millennials also had a negative view of socialism. So what this really tells us is that young people don't really know what capitalism or socialism is. But the really interesting thing about this poll that a lot of the media outlets didn't report on is that those same young people also said that they support free enterprise. So this tells me that they have just been told by Bernie Sanders and those on the left that, oh, capitalism is evil, greedy people are evil, but they like free enterprise. They like that idea of free enterprise. So it seems to me that there's not a lack of understanding of what capitalism is, but the fact that young people say they like free enterprise gives me hope that fiscal conservatives can still spread their messages to young people if done effectively.
What you're telling me is they actually do understand what capitalism is because it is free enterprise.
Right, but they don't understand that they're the same thing because they've been told over and over by Bernie Sanders that capitalism is the root of everything evil, and they believe it.
Well, I would argue that personally that we don't have capitalism operating currently. We have the perception it is, we don't. We have some mixture of what I'll call crony capitalism, well mixed in with creditism. Because we don't have this whole application of savings that are applied into a productive manner in capitalism. We don't have that because we have no savings. We only have the creation of money, which creates other kinds of problems. So we don't have. So they're right in their observations. I applaud them. They're calling it out, and they have every right to see it that way. The question is, how do we fix it as a country and as all generations here? It must be extremely frustrating, and you said it was, but to have the size of student loans and student debts they have. This is the first generation that have ever experienced this magnitude of student debts. Mm-hmm. And then not being able to find any kind of work that can even manage those debts, to feel hopeless. And that's what I'm hearing, that you feel a lot of them. And when you're hopeless, you'll grab onto anybody that's got some kind of solution, right?
Exactly. And that's why Bernie Sanders is doing so well. But I really think it's up to the Republicans to show young people that, look, socialism will destroy you. But again, it can't be if they need to spread this message in a positive way. So it's going to be a challenge for fiscal conservatives to do that. But that's the only way that young people are going to wake up. Or else I believe that young people will probably stay home and not even vote in November once Bernie drops out. Unless, again, Republicans give them a reason to go to the polls. But I really have not seen any meaningful efforts to reach out to young people from any of the candidates except for Bernie.
You've spent a fair bit of time with interviewing people in Washington. Is the apparatus in Washington broken? And I'm talking about our Congress and our Senate being able to be bipartisan and try and move things through Congress, or we become so polarized in our views that whether it's party views or opinions, we can't get anything done. Because I'm observing these kinds of problems around the world, actually, Kristin.
Oh, absolutely. The system is broken. And, the movements behind Bernie Sanders and Trump are actually very similar movements. People are fed up with the Republicans and the Democrats. I mean, on the Republican side, the Republicans gave the House and the Senate to Republicans last year. And what's changed? Nothing has changed. Obama got his entire budget passed. He got everything he wanted in his budget. Paul Ryan handed it to him on a silver platter. So the Republicans are fed up. They see the Republicans and the Democrats as the same thing. That's why they go to Trump. And then on the left, it's the same thing. The voters are fed up with these establishment bureaucrats who do not look out for the people on both sides of the aisle. That's why they're flocking to Bernie Sanders. So this is a really interesting and actually quite exciting election for that reason, because yes, I think the system is broken, but I think people are waking up to the fact that the system is broken. So although I don't really love Trump or Bernie, the fact that both of them are so popular does give me hope, because they're both outsiders, and it shows me that people want something new and they understand that the system is broken.
I don't even think the discussion's a party discussion, and where I'm coming from on this, if I go around the world, I see Marie Le Pen in France. I see Pepe Brillo in Italy. I see Jeremy Corbyn, who's socialist in Britain. I see, and I can keep on going, where people are like in the United States. I believe are voting with their middle index finger, and they're just
Yeah.
basically basically saying the system doesn't work. And youth unemployment in Europe and in Spain and Portugal is 46, 50%.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just a U.S. issue. It's a global issue that's saying the ability to have growth and vibrant economies. When economies aren't growing, uh, this is what people start to turn to. So it says, how do we get an economy going, and how do we start? Because if we don't, everything starts to crumble, and the social fabric crumbles. And last comment I'd make is I've said a number of times that if we don't get this election right, the next one's going to be about pitchforks and spears.
I completely agree with you.
Because people are running out of patience, and the young, as you said, the younger generation, which is becoming a bigger and bigger voting bloc at a very rapid rate, are not going to live in their parents' basements much longer. And I'm not saying we're going to see a revolt or revolution, but it's going to get a lot more intense. Where do you see things going? How do you see the millennial generation moving forward in their views? I mean, right now they seem to be migrating to Bernie, whether he wins or not, or what happens. But how do you see it manifesting itself with this frustration building?
Well, I think that, especially if Hillary gets the nomination, which we all know she will, young people will continue to be frustrated. Hopefully, they will start to understand when they get out into the job market and they start paying more taxes that we do need more capitalism. We need less socialism. I think they'll wake up to that once they start working and getting more jobs where they pay more of their income to taxes. So I think that will happen, but I do think that politics as we know it is changing forever in the US. I think this whole notion of having two establishment parties is crumbling, and I think a big reason for that is technology. I mean, a couple decades ago, these politicians could do anything they want and kind of get away with it. But today, everyone knows what's going on because of the internet. There's more accountability than ever. I see more apathy than ever, but I also see in some other way more awareness of what's going on. So it's kind of a weird combination of being apathetic because you're depressed, but also, people are generally do kind of know what's going on, and it's easier to hold people accountable because of technology. And I think that this increased awareness of the people of what our politicians are doing and this connectedness because of technology will only make the two-party system crumble even more. And we're seeing this huge movement towards outsiders, towards folks and politicians who are not career bureaucrats. And I think that will continue in future elections. Even if Hillary wins this time, I think this whole anti-establishment movement will continue within my generation.
Yeah, I think you put your finger right on it, and it's a lack of credibility. The politicians being accountable for their actions, which they kind of drift on, and the youth are demanding that, and so the two-party system itself are breaking down because they're not offering solutions. There's no accountability of really coming out with platforms they can support. So there could be, as we're seeing in these other countries too, a shift into different kinds of structures. Kristin, you're a very unique individual. I must say that. How did you get so smart on being able to sort these problems out so quickly? Was there something in your background that allowed this to happen?
Well, my parents raised me to be, I never got anything handed to me. So my first job ever, which I write about in my book, I was a scrubber. I was literally a cleaner at a hospital when I was 14, and I would, be scrubbing big pans full of vomit, and people would throw up all over the floor at the hospital. I would clean that up. So I had jobs since I was 14. I was making my own money, and my parents never gave me anything. And I think that being raised that way gave me a respect for accountability and maybe want to see accountability around me as well. I think that when people are just handed things like we see with a lot of young people, they tend to kind of tune out because they don't have to work for anything. So I think a lot of millennials just sit around on their MacBooks all day, and their parents might be paying for most of their tuition, and they don't really need to care because they're not paying for anything. And that's why I was saying before, I think once millennials en masse get into the workforce, I think we might see a different view of capitalism.
Yeah, if they can get into the workforce,
right,
and there's a workforce that's large enough to do it. The sense that, as we wrap here, the sense that everybody has is with the millennials is they have a sense of entitlement, that they have been grown up where there's this expectations, and this entitlements aren't. And I'm not talking about entitlement programs like Medicare and Social Security. I'm just that the system is going to deliver, and it's not delivering. Is there a sense of entitlement within the young generation? It's been brought on by their parents?
Yes. I can tell you firsthand that my generation, baby boomers were coddling parents. I mean, as a generation, they really coddled my generation. And all my friends mostly were just handed everything growing up. We all had iPhones by the time we graduated from high school, and everyone has a computer. I mean, the basic standard for living as a millennial is kind of crazy. Every single millennial has all of these amazing things because their parents buy all of this stuff for them. And, I hear my parents and their friends talking about how when they were younger, they didn't have anything. I mean, their parents would, make them work for every single thing they had. My dad had to mow the lawn every single day, do all this landscaping around his house. And, he wouldn't even get paid for it, but this was what was expected from his parents. And today's millennials, a lot of them just sit in their parents' houses watching TV shows, going online all day, and just expecting things to be handed to them. And it's super sweet that baby boomers want to take care of their kids, but at some point you have to let your kids fly and go off onto their own, or else it sort of starts to hurt them if you coddle them too much, because it creates this entitlement mentality where they don't want to work for anything.
The shock I see coming is, as you say, they have so many things that they have grown up, they will expect, colored TVs, cars, etc., but it's based on their parents having supplied them. Now they have to go out into the workforce, and that step down today is a bigger step down than ever before. In other words, going down to figuring out how you can pay a rent that are through the roof, the paying back college tuition that your parents never had to pay at this kind of extent. So how do you go from this lifestyle to starting from nothing, and it's going to take you a lifetime to even get back to where you were in your parents' basement? I may be exaggerating here, but I that's got to be incredibly depressing, and is going to be a growing problem as more and more of them are frustrated with it. We have to break, Kristin. Any key messages you'd like to leave with the millennial audience that is listening to us today, and a lot of the baby boomer parents that are listening?
Well, for the baby boomer parents, my message is stop coddling your kids. For millennials, I would hope that they would get my book, Government Gone Wild. I really want them to realize that more government involvement is not what we need. We have too much socialism right now. The reason we can't find jobs is because the government needs to get out of the way. The government is already in the way too much. It's making it too hard for businesses to flourish. It's taxing us too much. With the more government you have, the harder it's going to be for us to get jobs and to succeed on our own. So I would hope that they'll wake up to this. I would hope that they wake up to capitalism. Capitalism is our friend. A good job market is our friend. A great corporate environment is our friend. So I want millennials to wake up to this stuff and hopefully vote in a way that will lead to these sort of free market policies down the road.
Well, you're a great spokesman for this ideas, and I hope a lot of people hear your message and buy your book. Kristin, how could they find out more about your book, your writing? I know you have a website in case they want to follow the things you're involved with.
Sure. So Government Gone Wild, the book is in all Barnes and Nobles, and it's also available on Amazon. So that's out now. And then my website is thelibertarianchick.com, where you can see all my articles and, whatever's going on with the book tour. That can all be found there.
Kristin, all the best.
Thank you, Gordon.
We'll have to have you back. Talk to you again.